In this video, I'm gonna show you how I've made this subframe, and I'm gonna walk you through the entire process from making the mounting points on the lathe to bending the tubing and to getting to the finished product. Let's rewind. Well, we're back to the very beginning of the building process, and while you watch me prepare some rusty old stock, I want to tell you why am I even making the subframe in the first place. If you Google BMW R80 subframe, you'll see that a lot of companies make various shapes, sizes and quality of products that are ready to buy and mount. But you know what? For the seat I want to make, none of them fit the bill. And anyways, it's fun. To start off, I selected the tubing I want to use for the subframe, made some design choices in my head and figured out the dimensions I'll need for the mounting point. I fired up the lathe and cleaned up some stock that I'm turning into the parts that are going to be used for mounting the subframe onto the main frame of the bike. After this, it's removing all the unwanted material and getting to the dimensions I need. Since I don't have a milling machine, I had to make do with using the lathe for milling out the flat sides. For this, I mounted a cutter in the chuck and made a part holder that sits in the tool post. From here it's chipping away at the part slowly until I arrive at the desired shape and size. Of course, I ran into an issue with the cutter being too small in diameter to accommodate the longer mounting piece that goes in the bottom of the frame, so I swapped over for a larger one and finished the cutting process with that. Then it's just drilling the holes for the mounting and I'm ready to move on to the next bit of my little project. To bend the tubing and create the hoop for the main part of the subframe, I created the template. I drew up the shape on the computer. I made a jig to help precisely bending the tube. I mounted the tube in the jig and started heating the part using an oxyacetylene torch. Heating up the tube and slowly progressing ahead, I made the hoop and the bend in the two sides using markings on the jig as guidelines, and I made sure it all matched up to my previously drawn up profile. A quick test fitting of everything revealed a small problem. One of the weld beads on the BMW frame wouldn't clear the bottom mount of my subframe. A quick trip back to the lathe for some milling action and we're ready to continue. After fixing the issue with the mounting points, I took the measurements for the length and bend angle I need on the side supports. I made the bands and cut them to length, as well as using a tube notching template I made online, I cut the notches for a perfect match to the top of the frame. Next up was making the mounting points for the shock absorbers. It was simple lathe work, making some cylinders and then cutting some flat plates, which I ended up ditching. My first idea proven very bulky and I felt very limited with room for welding, so I cut some thicker plates and I made some new cylinders and I was finally ready to weld it all together. I cleaned all the welding surfaces and mounted everything up into position. I cut a round stock to the required length and added some threads on both ends to space the shocks out correctly and bolted it into place. Now it was just yet another round of making sure all my alignments are correct. I went around all joints and put some tack welds down. I made sure everything is tacked in place, so when I start welding, the heat will have less chance of ruining my meticulous alignment. After the tack welds, I removed the shocks so I don't damage them in the process. And I started welding everything together. I made sure to apply enough heat and filler material for proper penetration. But before I could finish the inside joints, I had to remove the round stock used for spacing, so I have the room necessary for welding. I waited until everything had cooled down completely, so when I remove the support piece, the alignment doesn't change. After finishing the last welds on the inside, I once again waited until everything had cooled down completely before pulling the subframe from the bike. Although I believe my welds are structurally sound, they aren't the prettiest thing in the world. I wanted to make some nice seamless transitions between the different parts anyway, so it was time for some grinding and sanding and grinding and sanding and some more grinding and sanding. I used an angle grinder, both with butterfly disc and a flat disc, a small Dremel tool with a metal cutting head and a lot of elbow grease for getting to the final state where I'm happy with everything. Now it's time for mounting it again, making sure everything fits nicely together and looking it through one more time. I'm really happy with the results. I believe it was worth putting all that hard work into building my very own one-off subframe from scratch.